All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for today's second episode of CEDA Sparks. I'm Lauren LaGreca, Marketing Manager here and your moderator for today. The presentation today will be recorded and made available to reference and share with others through CEDA's website and our YouTube channel. So for anyone who couldn't make today's session, you'll still be able to reference the presentation. Attendees are muted, and we ask that you stay muted for the duration of the presentation. Since we are recording each session separately, as a reminder, CEDA is the Cayuga Economic Development Agency, your one-stop for economic development, providing businesses with easy access to all the information, incentives, and resources needed to either start or grow your business here in Cayuga County. So whether you're launching your idea, looking to grow, or transitioning out of your business, we'll meet you where you are on your business journey. CEDA Sparks is a new initiative here at CEDA to bring you important topics in a format that you can revisit whenever you need to. We know the world of economic development is a sea of acronyms, so we're here to help you navigate through. Speaking of acronyms, today's episode is all about the CFA, the Consolidated Funding Application. To present on the topic, we've invited Dan Kolinski, Acting Regional Director with Empire State Development. The CFA brings together various funding programs from different agencies across New York State into one single application. The CFA is about streamlining the process to access funding and incentives for economic development projects, whether you're a nonprofit, business, municipality, or another entity. If you do have questions during today's presentations, we welcome them. Please type them directly to me in the chat box. If you do go ahead and submit a question, we won't mention your name or your business unless you do reference them in your question. We'll look to answer them at the end of today's presentation during the Q&A, but depending on the question you share, I may go ahead and interrupt the presentation and share that as we're going through. Since we do have a lot to cover, I'll now turn this over to my colleague Maureen, who will introduce herself and today's guest speaker.
Hey, Lauren, thanks for kicking us off this morning. I'm Maureen Reister, the Economic Development Specialist here at CEDA. My work focuses primarily on the larger projects, those that have a significant capital investment and usually come with a job creation or retention component. These types of projects usually have a significant impact for our community, and therefore the business may be eligible for incentives through New York State, which are applied for via the Consolidated Funding Application, which is our topic for today. I appreciate all of you who have taken the time out of your busy days to learn more about this process. As Lauren shared, our CEDA Sparks series discusses programs and topics that are important to sustain and grow your business. We understand how busy everyone's schedules are and your time is valuable, so these episodes are brief, high-level conversations of topics that are relevant and current in order to spark ideas for your business. The first portion of this episode is going to be recorded and will be live on our will live on our website and YouTube channels. And Lauren will be monitoring the chat for any questions you may have during the presentation. You can also use the chat to let us know about any future topics you may want to learn about. If you need further information or assistance with any of these programs, those can be gained from us here at the Cayuga Economic Development Agency. Our services are free and confidential, so please don't hesitate to reach out. After all the questions have been answered that are relevant to the topic of the day, we'll stop recording and then have an informal conversation to share any news or updates you need to know, and participants can ask whatever questions they may have of our presenter or CEDA staff. So in the future, please try to join us live. Without further delay, we are thrilled to introduce Dan Kolinski, Acting Director of the Central New York Regional Office of Empire State Development. Dan works to help government, businesses, and entrepreneurs in our Central New York region make the most out of the many economic development opportunities provided by New York State. Born and raised in Central New York, Dan graduated from West Genesee. He attended Hobart and William Smith Colleges in Geneva, New York, where he earned degrees in biology and environmental studies. After graduation, he moved to Washington, D.C., where he worked as an account executive for Max Sumner Communications. In 2016, Dan returned to Central New York and now resides in Camillus with his wife, Brittany, and their newest addition, their daughter, Ava. Thank you so much for joining us today. Dan, the virtual floor is all yours.
Thanks, Maureen, and thanks, Lauren, and thanks all of you for attending today. I first just want to say what great partners CEDA is to us. The work that we do, the important work that we do wouldn't be possible without partners like CEDA, who does such a great job of advocating on behalf of businesses and the community as a whole in Cayuga County. So just thank you for the partnership, and I'm looking forward to constantly being back in Cayuga County. I love visiting. It's a short drive to Auburn and the rest of the county. So looking forward to getting out, meeting you all, seeing your businesses, seeing the work that you're doing, and seeing how we can continue to bring resources into the region to help support the growth that we've seen over the last decade. As Maureen said, let me get on the right screen here. As Maureen said, my name is Dan Kolinski. I'm the acting director at Empire State Development. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Empire State Development, we are the chief economic development arm of New York State. We are a state agency. I represent one of the 10 economic development regions in New York State. I'll kind of get into that map a little bit later. But our goal is to help businesses in any capacity that we can be successful in the region. And that might be through our existing programming, our grants, our tax credits, or just by connecting you to other resources that we know are available to help you be successful. In today's presentation, I'm going to talk about a few things. One, I'm just going to give a high-level overview of economic development in our region and the regional council. And if you're not familiar with the process, I'm going to talk a little bit about what that is and who are part of our regional council. I'll jump into the Consolidated Funding Application, talking in some detail on how you apply, what that looks like. Then specifically, I'll jump into Empire State Development's funding sources. We have a few that'll be relevant to you. And then lastly, I'll talk about a few of the new funding sources for this year. So we've got a couple of exciting options, including a micro grant program for not-for-profits and a micro grant program for craft beverage companies and producers. So jumping right in, economic development and the regional council. So back in 2011, the regional councils were created as a way to do bottom-up economic development and really get input from the community members who would be the most impacted by the funding sources that were available throughout the state. And what this entailed was creating a regional strategy that was specific to Central New York. And as a result, we've made a lot of the funding decisions over the last we're around 13 now, 13 years based on that strategic plan, like I said, that was created from those individuals in our community. And that council includes folks from the business community, the not-for-profit world, higher education, our economic development organizations, elected officials. And so we got a broad swath of individuals' input and opinions on what should be included in that strategy. What's exciting is, that strategy is now, we did renew it every year. We kind of looked in to see what needed to be updated. But this year specifically, we've been tasked with looking at a new strategic vision for the next 5 years. And as many of you know, with Micron coming to the region, our region is bound for dramatic change over the next 5, 10, 20 years. And this is going to provide us a real opportunity to take a look at what have we done over the last 13 years, where are we currently, and where are we going, so that when we make funding decisions in the future, we can look at this new document to help us make those decisions. Since 2011, $7.7 billion has been awarded across the state to support over 9,500 projects. Additionally, $800 million has been awarded in nearly 70 downtown revitalization initiative and New York Forward communities. As you all know, Auburn was one of those DRI communities a few years ago, and we're seeing some great projects that are coming out of that and really leading to some catalytic change in our downtown communities. So we're excited to continue to partner both with Auburn and our other DRI communities to continue to support projects in those downtown areas. Currently, our council, these are our current members. The co-chairs, Dr. Linda Lemura, who's the president of Lemoyne College, and Randy Woken, who's the president of the Manufacturers Association of Central New York. And as you can see, Maureen Reister is a current council member as well. And as I said, she does a wonderful job of advocating on behalf of Cayuga County and the work that we see happening within the county. This map shows you how the state's broken up into the 10 economic development regions. So Central New York, right there in the center, is Onondaga County and the 4 contiguous counties around. So Cayuga County, Cortland County, Madison County, and Oswego County, along with Onondaga. And one thing that you'll notice, I put the numbers up there for the funding sources. I'd like to point this out because I think it's important because it demonstrates the work not only of our council, but folks like CEDA and Maureen and her staff, and you all attending the events today. Central New York leads all regions in awarded funding. And I'm proud of that because, it's important that, I try to tell people all the time, we can't fund a project if we don't know that it doesn't exist. And so by showing up today, by putting the effort in to be here, to talk to us, to learn about what's available to you, you're taking that first step to ensuring that we can get your project funded through the various sources that are available. Round 12, these numbers include part of round 12, was another great year for us. We were able to fund a lot of our priority projects, and I anticipate round 13 being the same. So thank you, both to Maureen, to Lauren, to the CEDA staff, and to you all for attending today, because that stat doesn't happen without everyone here today. So jumping right in, the Consolidated Funding Application, as Lauren and Maureen alluded to at the beginning of their talk, this is a streamlined approach to accessing funding throughout New York State. 30 different programs, 10 different state agencies can all be accessed through this one application, one single portal online. I know that that address at the top looks a little bit intimidating. Do not worry about that one. A much easier one to access, regionalcouncils.ny.gov. If you go to that, if you go there, you see right here, this is the landing screen that you'll see when you come to regionalcouncils.ny. And right when you go into it, it says apply now in that little yellow bar. That'll take you right to the CFA home screen. And in a couple slides, I'm going to show you what that looks like and what's included on the CFA home screen. Something else I'd like to point out, when you go to regionalcouncils.ny.gov, take note of this, write it down. This is an important website because if you scroll down a little bit further, you'll see something here that's called key documents. These key documents are something that will become some of your best friends. So the two things I like to point out, well, three things really. One, the available CFA resource guide. This will show you in detail every resource and every program that's available through the CFA this year. All 30 of those programs in detail are represented in this document. Now, it's a 160-page document, which I know is a little bit overwhelming, but there is a guide, a key on page 4 that'll show you each of the programs listed and who could be eligible for it. But please check that out, get a sense of if there's programs that you're interested in. The other thing I like to point out is the CFA application manual. This is a step-by-step guide of how to apply for funding through the CFA. It has an FAQ. It'll answer a lot of the questions that you might have in there. So please, feel free to reach out to us. Feel free to reach out to Maureen and Lauren at CEDA. They know the CFA well. They'll be able to answer those questions, but you'll probably be able to answer a lot of the questions you have just by going to the CFA manual. So check that out. Really great resource for you. And it lives on our page almost year round. The last thing I want to point out down below, the 2023 CFA program webinars. While I'm here today talking to you about the CFA as a whole and specifically the ESD grant programs, our other sister agencies hold webinars themselves on some of the programs that are specific to them. So for example, if you're interested in the local waterfront revitalization program, which is through the Department of State, they'll have a webinar that's specific to that program that you can click on, and they'll have questions and a presentation that you can listen to. So please check that out if you're interested in some of the other programs that we don't touch on today. But also, as I said, feel free to reach out to us and we can help put you in contact with the person who helps lead that effort. So when you click on that apply now link, that'll take you to this page here where the Consolidated Funding Application, this is the home landing page of the Consolidated Funding Application. A couple things to notice on this page. One is the big red box down below. All those same items that I mentioned on the screen before, the available CFA resources, the application manual, the webinars all live on this screen as well. So you can use these links to access all of those documents from here as well. And then there's two paths that you're going to take when you come into the CFA. The first is if you have not already registered your project through the CFA, you're going to click on the registration button. If you've already registered your project, you've received your token, and you're just coming back to continue your application, you can go to the login button here. Once you click on register, it's going to take you to this home screen. You'll put in your email address, confirm that email address, the organization name and your project name. And when you click register your new application, you will be then sent what we call a token. Check your junk folder. There's a very good chance that if it doesn't go to your main inbox, it will go into your junk folder. But that token is extremely important because that's going to be your unique login, basically password for this specific application. And a point that I should make, as we mentioned, you can apply for multiple different funding sources across multiple agencies with one application, but that application is going to be unique to that specific project. So for example, if you're a municipality and you're applying for multiple projects that are separate from one another, multiple locations, each of those projects will need its own unique application. But if one project is applying for multiple funding sources, you can apply for all those funding sources with the one application. And as I said, that token that you're going to get is going to be your unique qualifier for that specific application. Once you log in, you'll have the option to go to our program wizard or to our program list. What's great about the CFA is if you click on the program wizard, if you're not quite sure what programs that you want to apply for, that will give you some questions that will help you decide or make recommendations of what programs could be right for the project that you're describing. However, if you know for a fact, say that you're going to be applying for the ESD grant program, which is one of the ones that is our most popular programs, then you can go right to the program list, proceed down to ESD grant program. They're in alphabetical order. Click on that. And then what it'll do is it's going to put all the programs that you're interested in applying for into what we call a shopping cart. Kind of like when you are on Amazon and you want to buy multiple items, and you click on them, it goes into your shopping cart, and then you click that you want to check out. Same thing here. All the programs will exist in your shopping cart that you've applied for. If you accidentally click on one, you can remove it from your shopping cart. It'll tell you if there is a deadline associated or if it's an open enrollment program. And at the very bottom, you'll click on, start your application, and it will generate questions for each of the programs that you're looking to apply for. In terms of a timeline, and then I'm going to take a quick break and see if there, not a break, but a pause to see if there's any questions related to the CFA. The CFA did open on May 15th for those deadline programs. Actually, I'm going to go to one more screen and then we'll take a quick pause for questions. For the deadline programs, those programs close on July 28th at 4 p.m. sharp. That is a hard deadline. There is no exceptions. At 4:01 p.m., the application closes. I can't access it. You won't be able to access it. So please, please, please get your applications in if you're applying for one of the deadline programs before July 28th. I've had many times people call and say the internet wasn't working. I had a family emergency and I had to leave. I wasn't able to submit it in time. And unfortunately, I won't be able to do anything to get that application submitted. So I almost tell people, consider this a fake deadline, make it artificial. Your real deadline, make it July 15th. Make it July 20th, whatever it is to help you get that application in before the July 20th deadline, because once it closes, it's closed. For some of our other programs, May 15th, the CFA is open now, ongoing. Those programs will remain open until all the funds in the program are exhausted. And specifically what I want to talk about is the ESD grant program. Again, our most popular one. When people reach out to ESD, it's usually the one they're looking to apply for. 2 years ago, that used to be a deadline program and was subject to the July 28th deadline. We have since last year made that a rolling application, and what we do is we make decisions on those applications in what we call batches. So we will review your application based on when it comes in throughout the year in a batch, and those happen quarterly. So the first batch of applications will be reviewed on that July 20th deadline. So anything that comes in July 28th or earlier will be reviewed in batch one. It typically takes about 10 to 12 weeks for us to do our review process and for you to be awarded or notified of an award status. From there, we'll do an additional batch review at the end of October. Our third batch review will be at the end of December, and our last batch is typically in the middle of April. So based on the timeline of your project and when you're looking to get started, when you need to be awarded by, is when you should consider getting your application in. One thing I'll add, and I'm sure we'll get a question on this, is don't think that if you don't get your application in by July 28th, that there will not be funding for those later batches. There will be funding. We've done this, for last year, we didn't see any instances where we didn't have funding available, in the later batches. So don't think you have to rush an application into July 28th to increase your chances of getting awarded. It won't help you. If anything, we suggest delaying until your application is ready to go. The other thing that we say is your project should be shovel ready. So that means it should be able to get started within a year or 18 months of when you've been awarded, so that what we consider shovel ready. And this slide here, this is page 4 of that resource guide that I was telling you about. This shows you which programs are subject to the deadline and which programs are open on the open enrollment. So all these different programs here are subject to that July 28th, 4 p.m. deadline. With that, are there any questions that I can answer with regards to the Consolidated Funding Application?
Dan, just because that's a little small font-wise, could you just kind of run through the types of projects that are due on July 28th?
Sure. Yeah, so for example, Empire State Development, we have some additional programming, our Market New York program, our strategic planning and feasibility studies. Homes Community Renewal has the New York Main Street program. Department of State, the Local Waterfront Revitalization Program, and the Brownfield Opportunity Area. And a lot of these, I will say, are targeted towards municipalities instead of private businesses. So a lot of these, if you've never heard of them before or have not been targeted towards you, it's probably for a reason. A lot of them are applied for by municipalities. Department of Agriculture has the New York State Grown and Certified Infrastructure Technology and Research Program. Those are the types of things that would be available to on that deadline. And again, this is all on that website, regionalcouncils.ny.gov. The CFA resource guide. You can go in and you can look at all of these programs in detail. As I said, it's about a 160-page document, and it'll give you eligibility requirements, matching requirements, if it's on a deadline, and what type of sources of funds can be used for what eligible uses.
Thank you. And I see too that the Empire State Development grant funds and the Excelsior Jobs program, that is open enrollment, but as you encouraged, to be considered in this batch of funding, the deadline, it would be that July 28th, just to clarify.
Yeah, so again, and I highly recommend businesses that are looking to apply for the ESD grant fund, reach out to us or reach out to Maureen and her team so that we can start that conversation, because it all depends on what is the timeline for your project to get started. If you're looking to, start this fall, beat the snow, do some work in the fall, I highly recommend getting your project application in by that July 20th deadline, because you should have an answer sometime in or around middle to end of October, which will give you that opportunity to begin some of the work perhaps before snow starts falling this year. If instead you're thinking spring of 2024 is more likely when your project will be underway, then you can wait till that end of October deadline, because again, we're anticipating those awards coming sometime maybe in January, which will give you plenty of time to be awarded and to put all your sources and uses in order before you start your project in the spring of 2024. And I'll get into some details about why that's important as I jump into the ESD grant program next. Okay, so specifically then talking about Empire State Development, as I mentioned, we are the Chief Economic Development Agency of New York State. We have multiple programs, and this is just kind of a small portion of the programs that we have available across the state. But I'm going to focus on the ESD grant program first and foremost, as I mentioned, our most popular program and one that people are typically applying for when they come to us. I'm going to touch briefly on minority and women-owned businesses and the division that we have within ESD that helps either contractors who are looking to contract with MWBEs or individuals who are MWBEs who are looking for contract opportunities. I'm going to jump into the Excelsior Jobs program. I'm going to go into a lot of detail, but I'm going to do it at a high level, and I don't want you to it's going to be a lot of math and a lot of percentages. Don't let that discourage you, and don't let that confuse you. We'll do the work to help you with that. So I'm just going to kind of give you some of the details as we jump into that. And then lastly, Global New York. I just want to touch on some of the exporting opportunities that Global New York has for our manufacturers, so that you're aware and you can reach out to them for some of their assistance. So ESD grant funds. Eligible project costs for an ESD grant funds would be acquisition of land, buildings, and machinery and equipment, demolition, environmental remediation, new construction, renovation, or leasehold improvements, acquisition of furniture and fixtures, certain soft costs, so some architecture work, up to 25% of the total budget can be those soft costs, and planning and feasibility studies related to a specific capital project and or site. Ineligible project costs, we do not do and can't support retail projects or 100% residential projects. We can support, though, what we would call a mixed use project, specifically the non-residential components of that mixed use. So if there is a 3-story building in downtown Auburn that you're looking to renovate, with the first floor being commercial and the top 2 floors being apartments, we could help support the commercial component of that mixed use project. Some important information to remember and consider as you're applying, and things that can trip up an applicant or later on might lead to them not fully realizing the full grant that they were awarded. Our awards typically won't exceed 20% of total project costs, and I would say more likely they fall within the 10 to 15% range. We run an internal analysis when you submit an application for us to determine what is the best amount to fund a project to help make it a viable project. And one of the keys that we ask of you is, when the state dollars should be the last dollars into a project. So when you're reaching out to us for help, you should have secured all your other funding sources, the loan that you need to do the project, any equity that you're putting into the project yourself, and the state's input should be the last dollars that you need to make this a viable project. And as I say, if whatever that award is, be honest with us, about what that is, and we can help to fight to make that a reality so that your project can move forward. All awards require a 10% equity contribution from the awardee. What this means is you can't service the entire project via debt. Whether it's you or the company or an investment group need to make a 10% equity contribution into the project. And this just ensures that applicants have skin in the game, and it increases the likelihood of the project moving forward. The budget that you submit inside of your application should only include the cost for the specific project or phase that you're applying for funding for. If it's a multi-phase build out of a site, and in 2 years and then 5 years, you have phase 2 and phase 3, which are an additional $100 million in investment. Don't include those investments in your budget. The budget should be specific to the cost of the project that you're applying for. Also, projects, and this is where I was talking about that timing issue earlier about figuring out when you should get your application in. Projects should not begin and expenses cannot be incurred prior to award announcement. So any expenses that were made before you were awarded are ineligible expenses in terms of your total budget costs and what we can reimburse for. So for example, if you acquired a piece of property in a building that you're now planning to renovate, but you acquired that building before you were awarded, those acquisition costs could not be included in your budget for your project. Also, our funds are dispersed in arrears, and what this means is you'll have to complete the project. So if you said you were going to do a $2 million renovation of a building, you'll need to spend the $2 million, finish the renovation of the building, and get any documentation needed to demonstrate that before we'll work through the reimbursement of those grant funds. And typically it takes about 6 to 9 months from when you have completed the project and come to us for reimbursement until when that check is actually received in hand. And that's because there's multiple layers of auditing and paperwork collection that we need to do internally to keep the process moving. It includes some public hearings, it includes multiple levels of approval through our board, both the board of directors and the PACB board. So planning on when you're going to see those funds in terms of your cash flow, keep that in mind, that when you come to us and are ready for reimbursement, it's about a 6 to 9 month period when that check is actually in hand. Also, a public hearing is required of projects that involves acquisition, construction, reconstruction, rehabilitation, alteration, or improvement of the property. That is something that we will plan. We will do the work of hiring the lawyers and the stenographers. We'll put the public notices out into the local paper, but it is required by law that we hold a public hearing for those types of projects. I will say that it's pretty standard. We typically don't see anyone who shows up to offer remarks to those projects. But something that we will do, and again, nothing that you need to worry about scheduling. We'll take care of the scheduling in our office for you. Also, if you are awarded, there's a $250 application fee that you'll have to send in with what we call your incentive proposal. So you'll receive, if you're awarded a grant, you'll receive an award letter through us, and then work through someone in our office, whether it's myself or one of my colleagues, on what we call an incentive proposal. And that's basically like like an MOU, where we'll describe what the project is, what you've said that you're going to do with the project, the timeline for the project, and then if those things are completed, what the state will do in return, which is basically what is the grant amount that we've agreed to award you if you do the project as says. It will also include some of these details, like if you're assigned a minority and women enterprise goal, utilization rate, those types of details will be included in that as well. When you get that incentive proposal and you sign it and return it to us, you'll also return a $250 check for the application fee. Alternatively, at the end of the process, when you finish the project and you're ready to come in for the disbursement of your grant, we will create what is called a grant disbursement agreement with you. At that time, there's a 1% commitment fee based on the amount of the grant, and that helps to cover some of the costs associated with moving through the grant disbursement process. So hiring the lawyers and the stenographers, the scheduling the public hearings, etc. And lastly, as I mentioned, most projects will be assigned MWBE goals, and that's based on the grant amount. Utilization rate is typically around 30%, but we do look at projects individually, and based on the type of project and how you'll be expending funds, we can make determinations that are less than 30%. We work with our team at the office, OCSD, the Office of Supplier, and OCS, the Office of Supplier and Contract Diversity, I believe. alphabet soup of New York State government. So you'll work with the project manager through that office to help you determine how you're going to meet those goals. And again, it's based on the grant amount. So if you were to be awarded a $100,000 grant, and you have a 30% utilization goal, you'd be looking at a $30,000 utilization rate that needs to be expended on a certified MWBE firm in New York State. Any question on the ESD grant program?
Doesn't look like we've had any questions come through yet, Dan. Thanks so much.
So you might be asking yourself, I'm not very familiar with many certified firms. I've been assigned these goals. What are my next steps? As I mentioned, you'll work with a project manager through our team at OCSD to help you create a plan. But alternatively, we have resources. So two in particular, the New York State contract system. You can see where I've circled here that there is a directory of all the certified MWBE firms in New York State. And you can search by type of firm. You can search by mileage from a certain location. This is going to be an extremely useful tool to help you meet those goals if you kind of don't know where to start. Like I said, you'll also be assigned a project manager who can help you identify firms that can help you meet those goals. One thing that's important is to be thinking about this at the onset, because as you're working through your general contractor or you're working through subcontractors and you're trying to put out certain bids, you want to make sure that you are bidding out with this in mind from the get-go, so you don't have all the project bidded out and moving forward without having any of these goals been met. So definitely give a look out to this. And as I said, you can also reach out to your project manager to help you with that. The other area that where all of the New York State contracts are placed, and is a place that you can check out if you're looking both to advertise opportunities or if you are a certified MWBE, look for contracts to bid on, is the New York State Contract Reporter. So www.nyscr.ny.gov. Here you'll see those two opportunities as I mentioned them. I want to find contracts to bid on, or I want to advertise opportunities. So if you are a general contractor looking to hire certified MWBEs, you can put those opportunities on the New York State Contract Reporter. Moving right along, the Excelsior Jobs Credit Jobs Program. This is a refundable tax credit that's available for economic development initiatives for projects that create or retain jobs. That's kind of the main area, the main criteria that we utilize for the majority of the tax credits in this program, but also that prevent, reduce, and eliminate unemployment or increase business activity in the community or region. This is a discretionary program. So you'll see on some of the subsequent slides that there will say for the jobs tax credit, you can qualify for up to 6.85%. Just because there's an eligible amount that you might be eligible for does not mean that you'll necessarily be awarded the maximum amount. We will make a discretionary decision in the office based on the analysis that we see of your project. In order to be eligible for the Excelsior Tax Credit Program, you need to be one of these target industries: manufacturing, agriculture, software development, scientific R&D, distribution centers, back office operations, life science companies, entertainment company, music production, and financial services. So that's the first step, the first threshold you have to cross in order to be eligible for this program. So if you are not one of these targeted industries, don't worry about the Excelsior program. It won't be applicable to you. But if you are a targeted industry, definitely take a look at it, especially if you're going to be creating new jobs or making significant investments into your business, because then you can qualify for those for some of the different tax credits that exist. And what are those tax credits? So the one that is the most popular, the one that we utilize the most, the Excelsior Jobs Tax Credit. As I mentioned, this is a credit of 6.85% of wages per the new job created to cover a portion of the associated payroll costs. The other one that we typically will couple that with is the Excelsior Investment Tax Credit. So this is valued at 2% of qualified investments. Those two, people who are creating the minimum jobs needed to be eligible, typically take advantage of or are incentivized with to move their project forward. Two other ones. We have the Excelsior Research and Development Tax Credit. If you are currently in the federal program, the Federal Research and Development Tax Credit, you can receive a credit of up to 50% of the federal credits that you're receiving, with a maximum of 3% of the research expenditures being made in New York State. Also, we have the Excelsior Real Property Tax Credit. This, as you'll see, is for only regionally significant projects. And on the next slide, we'll demonstrate what qualifies you to be considered a regionally significant project. But this is a credit of 50% of the property taxes in year one, decreasing by 5% every year over a 10-year period. So there's 4 potential tax credits. Again, the jobs tax credit and the investment tax credit are the 2 that are most utilized. And also, as I mentioned, don't worry about the math, don't worry about the percentages. We can work with you to figure out what you might be eligible for through the project if you're eligible to apply for the Excelsior Tax Credit Program. Jobs and investments criteria. So if you're looking for a couple of those specific programs, including the job tax credit, the investment tax credit, to be eligible, there's a minimum job creation amount that is required for each industry. So scientific R&D, software development, agriculture, manufacturing, music production, and life sciences all have a minimum of 5 jobs that need to be created to be eligible for those programs. Back office operations is 25, distribution centers it's 50, and entertainment companies it's 100. To also be considered a regionally significant project and be eligible for that additional tax credit, as I mentioned, you can see that there are higher thresholds for the jobs, and there's typically, in most cases, a investment criteria as well. So for scientific R&D, it's 20 minimum jobs and a $3 million investment. For manufacturing, it's 10 minimum jobs and a $1 million investment. That will open you up if you hit these minimums for also the regionally significant project and that real property tax credit add-on. The other track is the investment track. So if you are a targeted industry, you're making an investment and you're retaining at least 25 full-time jobs, or 5 if you are a manufacturing firm, you can qualify for a benefit at a 10-to-1 ratio. For every $10 you're investing into the business, which can include the capital investment plus the wages and benefits, you can create, for every $10 you can get $1 worth of Excelsior tax credits. Similar to the grant program, the effective date, this means that you cannot hire anybody, or any jobs that you create prior to being awarded your Excelsior tax credit will not be eligible towards your total count that you said you'd create. So if you say you're going to create 10 jobs, but 2 of those are created before you were awarded, you'll still need to create 10 more jobs after the award date. Any questions about the Excelsior tax credit program? Okay. And briefly, I'm going to touch on this fast. Global New York, that is a division within New York State ESD as well. Their goal is to assist, specifically, and why it's important for the folks on this call, is to assist New York State small businesses to export their products and services globally. We have foreign officers in many of the different regions across the world, including Europe, including Israel, China, India, Africa, Canada, and I believe we also have small offices in South America. So if you're a business that's making something in New York State and either you are not currently exporting but would like to explore that option, or are exporting but want to do more of it, reach out to us. We'll connect you with our Global New York team on some of the things that they have available. And I'm going to quickly jump into these. I won't go into too much detail. Please, if you have more, if you'd like to learn more, feel free to reach out to our office. 3 specific programs: the Export Marketing Assistance Service, or EMAS, the State Trade Expansion Program, STEP, and the Global New York Grant Fund Program. Real quick, EMAS is a no-cost service for eligible companies, can choose up to 2 markets per 12-month period, and you can you benefit from a customized personal program within that region. So the Global New York Foreign Office will provide you with a report on the local market intelligence and a list of sales agents and distributors in that region. The STEP program, funded through the U.S. Small Business Administration. This is up to a $14,000 grant per program year to help you export. The grant is awarded as a reimbursement, like the ESD grants are, and can be eligible based on 70% of total eligible costs. Some uses for that could include financial assistance for travel, subscription to services offered by the U.S. Department of Commerce, export training, international or qualified domestic trade show exhibits, website content and foreign language translation, consulting services, and compliance testing. And lastly, the Global New York Grant Fund provides grants to help New York State small and medium-sized businesses increase export sales and not-for-profit organizations with export promotion initiatives. And you can see a whole list of these, of what would be eligible for some of these programs, whether you're a for-profit company or a not-for-profit company. As I said, if there's something here that interests you, please reach out to us. We'll connect you with our Global New York partners to ensure that we're getting you into those programs that might be applicable to your business. And some additional funding sources for this year that you should be aware of, an enhanced ESD grant. So I talked about those ESD grants earlier. I'm going to dive into quickly how you might qualify. I had mentioned that traditionally we don't fund more than 20% of total project costs for the ESD grant program. If you qualify and are eligible for the enhanced ESD program, you can qualify for up to 40% of your total project costs this year through the ESD grant program. Additionally, 2 new programs, the Craft Beverage Micro Grant and the Not-for-Profit Capital Grant Program. We also have a new round of DRI in New York Forward this year and a small allocation for Restore New York. So the Enhanced ESD Grant Program. I'm not going to read every word that's on this page. This is all located in our guidebook if you want to look into it further. But the goal is to target building sustainability and investing in disadvantaged communities. So if you are a not-for-profit, that's the key, you need to be a not-for-profit, and you're doing a project in one of these 4 areas, projects that support green buildings and sustainable development, childcare projects located in a distressed community, which most of Central New York is considered distressed by the ESD standard, and innovative public-private partnerships with an intention for higher education institutions. That's the key there, that we'd like to see that those public-private partnerships are in coordination, with public-private partnership is in coordination with higher education institutions. If you're one of these 4 types of projects and you're a not-for-profit, your project could qualify for up to 40% of the total project cost being awarded in the form of an ESD grant. That is new this year. We're excited to see how that works out. So please, feel free to reach out to us to talk more about what that could include. Additionally, we have $5 million available for the Craft Beverage Micro Grant Program. I'm extremely excited about this. We are very aware in our office here and across the state of what a huge both tourism and local effect breweries and wineries and cideries and other producers have in our regions. You can't go into almost any downtown nowadays without seeing a craft brewery, and they're typically packed on Friday night. That has a dramatic effect both on our region and on our communities. And so we're looking to help those existing licensed facilities increase production capabilities, business infrastructure, and profitability of the businesses for that are licensed to produce wine, beer, spirits, hard cider, and mead. This is a matching fund program, so it's a 50-50 based on what you're making the investments. However, you could be having a larger investment in your business and qualifying for the maximum award grant. It doesn't necessarily have to be 50-50. It could be a larger private investment to state investment. The program's intent is to induce equipment investment, upgrades, and to increase production capacity, to induce investments in facilities upgrades that will enhance the customer experience and make the craft beverage tasting rooms more profitable. These grant awards will range from $25,000 to $50,000. And again, that can be a 50-50 match for that program. I'm very excited. I'm hoping that this is oversubscribed. I'm hoping that we can put forward some great programs, projects out of Central New York. So please, if you're aware of anyone that could qualify or would be interested and isn't aware of it, please spread the word and have them reach out to us or fill out the potential project application that I'm going to share at the end of this slideshow.
Dan, can I pause you right there on that program?
Sure.
Just one thing that I'm noticing, it says businesses licensed to produce these craft beverages. And so if we are working with anyone who is in the process of starting up, this would preclude them from applying for this program. Is that correct?
Correct. You do have to be an existing licensed facility.
Okay, thank you.
But that being said, Maureen, if they are looking to start up manufacturing operations in one of these areas and they have capital projects, they could qualify for an ESD grant for that project.
Correct. And on that topic, is there a minimum project size that is sort of, I don't think there's a set amount, but a size of a project that would not really make it worth going through the entire process, the monitoring, the paperwork, all of the work that goes into this?
Yeah, so ESD this year has added the stipulation that the minimum grant that we'll provide is $50,000. So if you're assuming that is, 20,000, if 20% is the 50,000 range, that's $250,000 project. So we're really not looking, and we probably won't fund projects that are less than $250,000. If there's rare cases on why we should consider something differently, you should have them reach out. That's not like a black and white rule, but that's a generalization. And I don't want to miss something if there's an opportunity to help a business that otherwise couldn't be helped. But given the amount of paperwork, given the amount of administrative capacity needed to work through our grants, a $250,000 project is usually the minimum that we'll consider. And then obviously for this micro grant program, $50,000 would be the minimum, because if it's a 50-50 match, and the minimum is $25,000, then you'd have to be a $50,000 investment to qualify.
Right, that 250,000 is for the Empire State Development Grant funds. The big.
Correct.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Correct. But as I mentioned, we are not limiting this program to 100,000. If it's a 50-50 match and you're looking for $50,000, we're not limiting it to you just having a $100,000 investment. If you have a $200,000 investment and you want to still apply for the $50,000, you can do that.
Perfect.
Okay, so similarly, we also have a $5 million not-for-profit micro grant program. This is for to support not-for-profit organizations who are providing an economic support in their region by providing matching funds for capital improvements. Funding will be made available for not-for-profit organizations whose mission is to provide an economic and community benefit to the area the organization serves and who are undertaking capital projects that include expansion and/or upgrades to the organization's facility, purchases of new equipment, and capital improvements to other capital improvements. These grant awards will range from $25,000 to $100,000. Again, that's a matching amount, but you could come to us with a larger than $200,000 project and qualify for the $100,000 grant. The important thing to just because you are a not-for-profit doesn't automatically make you competitive for this program. The real key is that you're providing some sort of an economic and community benefit, and you need to demonstrate through this application how us making this investment will allow you to increase or better serve the community that you're currently in. So just because I don't have a straight example, but we should talk about, if you are interested and you think you might have a good project for this, talk to us. I want to make sure that it's something that would be competitive in this. We're anticipating this program to be very oversubscribed. We think it's going to be a very competitive process, and I want to make sure that your application is as strong as possible before you hit submit. Again, $50 million this year will be available for Restore New York. This is a program that needs to be applied for by the municipality. It could be the city, it could be a town, it could be a village, it could be the county. And this is for program, this is what I call kind of the big, bad, ugly buildings, those that have been vacant for a long time and we can't figure out what to do with, or abandoned, condemned, or surplus. These funds can be used to demolish, deconstruct, rehabilitate, and reconstruct projects. Kew County has been very successful at securing Restore New York funding in the past. We were able to fund a couple of great projects, one project in round 6, one project in round 7. I'm hopeful that we can continue to fund these types of projects in Kew County moving forward. But this is a great program because you can qualify for up to 90% of the project costs. And it really helps make some of these projects that would otherwise be impossible to be financially viable, get them off the ground, put properties back in the tax roll, back into productive use. So if there are sites that you're thinking, boy, that's been abandoned forever, how do we get that street corner, that corner lot on Main Street, and that building's been abandoned for 15 years, how do we get that back in productive use? This is a great program to do that. Please reach out to both CEDA and to the municipality that the project site exists in, because they'll be the ones, the municipality are the ones that are putting out the actual application for this. It isn't the individual who owns the property that would do the application. Also, it has to be for property that's already under site control. You can't use this funding to purchase properties. So when considering which properties you'll be applying for, make sure that they're properties that the site control is already there and the owner has demonstrated an interest in wanting to move forward with the project. And lastly, again, a DRI round 7 and New York Forward Communities round 2, $100 million. Our region has 10 million for both those programs. Again, we'll be choosing 1 DRI community and up to 2 New York Forward communities. New York Forward, and you are all probably very familiar with DRI. You may have even been involved in the process of Auburn's application a few years ago. New York Forward is great because it is meant to target some of our smaller, more rural communities, our villages, our towns, that maybe don't need $10 million to see a transformative effect in their municipality. You know, $4.5 million when leveraged with private development can go a long way to transforming a community and lead to some catalytic investments around those projects that are funded. I highly encourage folks, if you're in your community and you want to see, you know, changes happen, you have a vision for 5, 10, 15 years from now, you know, work with your local elected officials, work with your community leaders to have a discussion about what does the future of your municipality look like. Especially with Micron coming, I think this is a perfect opportunity to start those conversations, to think about what are we going to be investing in, how do we get those projects funded. Let's put a plan together to see what that's going to look like. And then I would highly recommend applying for the New York Forward and or DRI applications. You know, again, work with CEDA on this. Maureen sits through, she reads these applications every year. She's familiar with the process. She knows what goes into a successful application. It's a great way to, even if you don't receive funding in 1 year for New York Forward or DRI, to start to build that vision and that plan for the future of your municipality. And likely some of the projects that come out of those discussions could be funded with other funding sources. It happens all the time where municipality doesn't get funded through DRI or New York Forward, but some of those mixed use projects get funded through the ESD grant program. So please, and I'm happy to come talk to municipalities about this program, how it works and why it's important. The example that I always give, you know, Homer, New York won the DRI last year. 3 years ago, they came to us and they didn't really have a vision, but they kind of worked together to get some stakeholders together. They put forward a plan. It wasn't quite good enough to win. The following year, they come back again, better, but still not good enough to win. Last year, they come back with a great plan. They brought all the community stakeholders together and they ended up winning the $10 million. It sometimes just takes 1 or 2 people to start those conversations before you know, all of a sudden 3 years later, you've won $10 million for your community. So, you know, please follow up with me if that's something that you're interested in as well. And with that, this is a document that we created internally in our office to help you discuss your project with us. I will make this available. I'll send this to Lauren along with these slides so that she can send them to you all. Or if you are interested, please request them through them. Fill this out if you think you have a project that you're interested in applying for funding for. Send it back to myself, send it back to Maureen and Lauren at CEDA so that they're aware of it. And then we can help walk you through, you know, are you ready to apply for a CFA? Is the ESD grant program right? Is there another program that's right? Do we need some more work? Maybe we want to wait and apply next year. This is just a great way for us to talk to you about your projects and ensure that when you do hit submit on that application, you have the highest chance of success in receiving the grants that you need to make your project move forward. With that, I'll take any questions. This is the information of the folks in our office, myself, and the two my 2 colleagues, Zach and Ryan, in our office. Feel free to reach out to us with any questions you have. But with that, I will take any other questions you have. I'll actually stop the share. And we can have just an informal conversation.
Thank you so much, Dan. Are there any questions from anyone who's joining us here today?
Ken, so all the information that I provided today is the same in Western New York. You would just work through our Western New York office for putting through any applications. But these are statewide programs that are available to all the regions across the state.
Thank you.
We've had no other questions come through the chat. That was very informative. Dan, thank you so much for that. And we'll go ahead and I'll pitch this over to Maureen if you have any questions on your end. Otherwise, we can go ahead and end the recording.
I was sort of asking some of those questions along the way as we went. So thank you, Dan, for answering those. And Here at CEDA, we are happy to sit down and discuss the projects that you might be thinking about. There are many, many resources, many incentives, many benefits that are available out there locally, regionally, in New York State, even federally. So it's important to engage with us early because some of these incentives you cannot retroactively get access to. So talk to us early. We'll help you brainstorm, direct you on which programs you should be looking into, give you the information, make connections, help you along the way. And we're here to help, free and confidential. So I want to thank Dan. Every time you do these presentations, even after all these years, I still learn something new. And so thank you for your time. And thank you to Lauren for moderating today. If there are any other topics that you'd like us to consider for future episodes, or if you need assistance, please contact a CEDA specialist. At this point, I'll end the recording and we'll have a chat about other things that are going on.